Morning, everyone. So I'm starting now. The first section is an introduction on plant genetic resources with a focus on Europe and policy frameworks. So we have two speakers, as Giovanni said. I would like to present the first speaker is Lorenzo Maggioni. He has a Master of Science in plant genetic resources conservation and use at the University of Birmingham, and a PhD at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences in brassica domestication. And apart from that, he has been secretary of ECPGR for the last 25 years or more. So, Mr. Maggioni, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for your kind presentation. I will start with a little overview of introductory overview of plant genetic resources, some historical key facts, international framework, and then move on to the ECPGR network, European network that I know better, with a bird's eye view of everything. It will be a simplistic presentation, and I will show you also some conclusions that will give a perspective, possible perspective for the future. So starting with a bit of key facts, key points of the history of plant genetic resources. You probably know that plants were exchanged since ancient times, since the beginning of history. Sumerian and Egyptians have left records of travels to find new plants, but certainly the contact between the continents in the end of the 15th century brought a lot of exchange of plants. But it was in the after 1900 that with the rediscovery of Mendelian genetics, it became clear that the use of the genetic diversity is essential for crossing and improvement. And therefore, some scientists started to go around the world to collect material, especially land races, but also wild relatives, to use for breeding. Can we try to put the people online? Can you please mute yourself? Yeah. Okay, so two important names are Harry Arlan and Nikolai Vavilov. By the way, it is 80 years and the geneticist was very dangerous. A number of what we call now gene banks, but they were called introduction stations at the time, were started to build in between 1920 and 58. The first ones, the first one in Leningrad, the Commonwealth Potato Collection in Cambridge, the Rockefeller Foundation collections that became then the CGIR gene banks, and the National Seed Storage Laboratory in Fort Collins. And this is one famous article that came out in 1936 by Harlan and Martini. It was the first cry of alarm about the disappearance, the loss of genetic resources. You can read perhaps that it says when new barleys replace those grown by the farmers of Ethiopia or Tibet, the world will have lost something irreplaceable. When that day comes, our collections, constituting as they do but a small fraction of the world's barleys, will assume an importance now hard to visualize. So this was 1936. But it took until the 60s, 50s and 60s, when genetic resources reached really a global attention. And there was a clear consciousness about the risk of loss of genetic resources, especially wild relatives and land races. And in the early 60s, it was Eucarpia, the European Association for Research and Plant Breeding in Europe, that stimulated and advised for the establishment of collections. And the idea was to create sub-regional gene banks in Europe. Some were actually founded in Izmir, in Bari, in Braunschweig, in Lund. Basically, only the one in Lund became maintained this role of becoming a sub-regional collection for the Nordic countries. And then there were a number of FAO conferences where panels of experts discussed and raised the issue of conservation of genetic resources. And also landmark was the 72 meeting in Stockholm, and eventually a number of actions were taken, and the PGR gene banks started to establish collections in the developing countries with crop specificities. And in 1974, there was also the creation of this office called IBPGR, International Board for Plant Genetic Resources. It was based at FAO in Rome and had the role of promoting collecting activities around the world and establishing an international network of base collections that would maintain the material on behalf of the rest of the world. And here, at the same time, the regulatory landscape started to develop. And these are three landmarks that I would like to mention. Also, the change of paradigm that came about. Since in 1983, there was this agreement that was called International Undertaking. It was an agreement made within the context of FAO. And the main concept at that time was that genetic resources were a heritage of mankind. So this meant that there was an accepted idea of free and unrestricted exchange, because this material was essential for food security. Then in 1993, so only 10 years after, there was a complete change of perspective with a political discussion that took place, especially at the Rio Convention of 1992, that led to the agreement on the Convention of Biodiversity. And this was set in a completely different stage, where genetic resources became known as being subject of national sovereignty, so no longer heritage of mankind. And the need to conserve, but also to use and to share equitably the benefits derived from the use. So this meant in practice for the use of genetic resources that there would be discretionary bilateral agreements among the parties in order to obtain material. It became immediately clear that this was not practical for genetic resources for food and agriculture, so this would have to continue for all the rest of the biodiversity, but for food and agriculture, this was an unacceptable situation because it would mean for every exchange and that a plant breeder or even a farmers association, whatever, a researcher would have to undertake very difficult agreements and at the discretion of the parties. So there was an agreement to start a negotiation to create a specific system that could apply to this material that has a strategic importance and is a public good in a sense that enables improvement for food security. So there was a negotiation that went on for 7 years at FAO and resulted into an international treaty on plant genetic resources, food and agriculture that entered into effect in 2004. This treaty is in line with the Convention on Biodiversity, so it guarantees equitable sharing of the benefits, but it has some advantages. So there is a multilateral system established whereby material included in this multilateral system is basically remains as a public good, can be exchanged with in a standard way, in a standard form, so equally for all the exchanges, and this is the so-called standard material transfer agreement. There will be a more detailed presentation about this following. One point is that this multilateral system, including genetic resources, has some limitations. One of them is that it is limited to a list of crops, Annex 1. So only this was the result of negotiations, political negotiations, not really a choice based on what is essentially important for food and agriculture. For example, moussaka is part of the multilateral system, so eggplant you can exchange easily. Greek salad, no, it's out because tomato, cucumber, and pepper are not part of the multilateral system. So this is the evolving global system for conservation. So some landmarks, some points that have been created since 1993. Some of them were foreseen by the international undertaking. Others came out later. So agreements, I already mentioned, international undertaking, international treaty. The FAO Commission is an intergovernmental forum at FAO that allows discussion and negotiation at the policy level among all the countries. For cooperation, the creation of networks, regional networks, and I will talk about Europe. Crop and thematic networks are part of this system that should enable, as a global effort, the conservation and sustainable use of plant genetic resources. On the information side, we have the state of the world reports. They are prepared by the Commission at FAO. The views, the World Information Daily Warning System is a metadata catalog of genetic resources. Genesis came out later. It is a catalog at the accession level, and that's being created by the Crop Trust. The Global Information System is another animal. It's trying to make all the information existing interoperable, and this is managed at the International Treaty Secretariat. Resources, International Fund or Benefit Sharing Fund. This is the fund where all the benefits derived from the use of material in the multilateral system should eventually be deposited and redistributed to essentially developing countries. The Crop Trust is an institution that has created an endowment to conserve the most important genetic resources in the world, ex situ. Among the actions, the Global Plan of Action is a document that is, again, created by the Commission on Genetic Resources at FAO, and it is renewed on a rolling basis. So there are 2 editions at the moment of this global plan. The International Network of Ex situ Collection is an ideal network of ex situ collections that actually never became really existing, apart from possibly the CGR gene banks that maintain material on behalf of the rest of the world. There were various attempts to create this network and to maintain it. Now it is converted, let's say, into the multilateral system. So the gene banks that participate in the multilateral system with their material can be considered part of this network. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault, you will have heard about this, is not a gene bank, as it was said, but an ultimate deposit of material that is put there as a black box for safety, but it cannot be redistributed to the users from there. Okay, and now I move to the European situation. Going back a little bit to 1980, at this moment, in Europe, EUCARPIA, FAO, and the United Nations Development Programme were aware that there was a need for better cooperation. It was a time when Europe was split in East and West, and there was not much communication. At the same time, there were a lot of gene banks already created at the time in both sides of Europe, and the need to exchange this material and to better use it. So there was this consciousness, and based on these considerations, the recommendation was to create a network that would guarantee free and full exchange of this material, a better coordination for conservation, use of the data, and also making available data and material to developing countries. This was the idea. And also coordinating the evaluation of genetic resources. So something that is still valid today, I would say, to a large extent. Now we have this network, ECPGR, it is called, and this is the long-term goal: to collaborate in Europe, rationally and effectively conserve material ex situ and in situ, and provide access, make this available, and increase the use. So these are the concepts. This is to explain some of the acronyms that may be confusing to some of you and that are close to our work. And so one is ECPGR, I mentioned before. It was created in '74. It was an office in FAO, and ECPGR, when it was created, actually 2 years after, was linked to this office in ECPGR. This office became independent from FAO in '92. Well, I still receive letters saying Lorenzo Maggioni, FAO, via Terme di Caracalla from Bella Barca. So please change your address because since '92, ECPGR became IPGRI, International Plant Genetic Resources Institute, one of the CGIR centers, so International Agricultural Research Institutes of the Rockefeller Foundation, and ECPGR moved with that. This institute became changed name and composition in 2006. It became Bioversity International, and then now it is the Alliance of Bioversity International in SIAT, and in the future it will be one CGIR. So ECPGR is still based in these institutions, not anymore as not part of the organigram, but as a hosted office, hosted secretary. And by the way, some people from IPGRI in 2002 went out and created the Crop Trust. We are still called IPGRI because IPGRI is the legal name even of Bioversity International and the Alliance. So just to explain why we are ECPGR, IPGRI, and Bioversity, etc. Okay, this program has a few features that make it successful in a way. One is that it is self-funded. So other networks around the world, regional networks, have basically disappeared or are not functioning because they depend on external funding. In our case, the European governments continue to decide that it is important and they put money into it. And it is therefore governed by the European countries that are the members with a steering committee that is made of national coordinators of each country. And there are a number of observers, FAO, Euroseeds, Eucarpia, NGOs, Crop Trust, Norgen, Bioversity. The countries should, apart from their contribution, which is in the end minimal, so it will not allow to maintain an infrastructure and an efficient conservation and use of genetic resources in Europe, but it only maintains an office and some activities, some documentation activities. So the idea is that the countries also contribute in kind, and what their own resources are reoriented from a national perspective to a regional perspective. And we work through working groups, and the program is renewed every 5 years. It is a program for the wider Europe, so it's not European Union. Even the UK can be part of it. Or ideally, it could reach all these countries that are in different variations of purple. But at the moment, those in purple, deep purple, are the members. And so we have a structure with, as I said, the governing element, the steering committee, a secretariat that implements the decisions, working groups. We have 24, crop and thematic. We have a gene bank managers network that was just created and still needs to start operating, and a number of initiatives that I will now describe in more or less detail. But the working groups meet, and produce publications with information on what is going on in the individual countries, and work plans on how. So creation of knowledge and exchange of information. They have also in the past created central databases, crop databases. There were about 40 or 50 of these that are now partly included in Eurisco, and some of them still live and function. They carry out activities and produce reports. But let me go now to explain you what is AGES with a little more detail. This is a European Gene Bank integrated system, an initiative of ECPGR to try to, let's say, to do what. Let's see what to do what. We have a background that is this situation of more than 400 collections in Europe across 40 countries, more than 2 million accessions. Only part of those are unique. And this system was created without any planning, without any rational coordination, and it leads to an inefficient use of the resources. And also the material is often not accessible. So there are some problems. Look at the collections. There are two examples of tomato and apple, how they are distributed in Europe. So if a breeder wants to access all the gene pool of tomato, at least what is available from the gene banks, there are many countries that have this material, so it may be difficult to access everything. It is better to try to work collaboratively, we think. There are difficulties in these gene banks also. There are so many, but many of them lack of proper conservation facilities, or they do not have good safety duplication. There are always often regeneration backlogs. The standards are sometimes not well defined. The quality of material information is dishomogeneous, and the exchange conditions of the germplasm are not the same everywhere. So we had this objective to create a system whereby we conserve in Europe in a collaborative way, with quality standards that are the same for everyone and agreed together. We conserve what? The genetically unique and important material of what? All crops, not just the Annex 1 crops, but all crops, and especially making them available through the SMTA, which is the Standard Material Transfer Agreement defined by the international treaty. The key components to make this possible are these three, let's say, a Memorandum of Understanding, European Collection, and the quality system. The Memorandum of Understanding is an agreement that a country at the governmental level signs, so it makes a commitment, formal commitment, to conserve material in the long term at the quality standards that have been agreed by the system, and commits to provide all of these accessions through that system, SMTA, to adhere to the standards and to define which collections in the country contribute to the system. So we have obtained 35 member countries. So these 35 member countries in green have signed this document. So it means they are committed. So at least on paper, this is a success. And they have defined 68 institutions that would contribute accessions. They would contribute to a European collection, as it is called. And here are the numbers. So you can see here we have problems. After more than 10 years, we have only 70,000 accessions designated by the countries in the European collection, because we do not force countries to include material. It is their choice. They need to decide which accessions they can maintain at those quality standards and make available. So only 70,000 after 10 years, considering that we have 2 million in Eurisco, it means this is not growing. Anyway, these are the type of crops that are included. I want to point out that those that are circled are non-annex 1. So we have a success here. So there is the intention to distribute all the crops, not only moussaka, but also the Greek salad is part of this. And the quality system foresees that there is better transparency with the publication of operational gene bank manuals by every gene bank, agreement on standards, have a safety duplication policy, distribution guidelines, and there should be a monitoring system. So the gene bank manuals have been published by a number of gene banks, only few. There are less than 10, so this is another weak point. It's difficult to obtain. Crop-specific standards for conservation have been developed by the working groups, this list, so not for all, but there is some development. So what I would conclude about ages, there is a paper published, an opinion papers that explains why this is such a good idea, but why it is not working properly, I would say, and how it could be improved. I'm moving to documentation, and if you allow me a little story, maybe you want to know how Eurisco had this name. This was created in the context of a European funded project. It was called ECPGR, and there was a contest what name to give to this catalog of ex situ material in Europe. So I was there in my room in a weekend and had an old dictionary of ancient Greek and Italian, remnant of my high school, and started to browse in the EU part, EUR. Let's see if there is something. And so I came up to Eurisco. What does this verb mean? To find. Well, this could be interesting, and so I proposed Eurisco, and that was appreciated and selected. So maybe after 25 years, I should say this. So this is an online catalog of accessions in Europe. The beauty of this catalog is that it gathers data from 43 national inventories, and the way to do that is this one. There is a sorry, oops. There are focal points in each country that gather information from the country, from all the institutes, and there is a well-defined format for transforming these data and transferring them to Eurisco. And so we have this network of focal points that are trained continuously and so cuddled, and therefore we managed to ensure that there is a transfer of data from a central point. So there is no other possibility to enter data to Eurisco. So this means that the country can also abide by the commitment of the Convention on Biodiversity International Treaty to clear the data that are part of the country. And so Eurisco, through this channel of flow of information from institutions to focal points. In the case of the Nordic countries, one focal point serves 5. This information goes to Genesis, is the global information. It's a global catalog that also contributes to the global information system. So this comes together with the CGIR data, North American data, and others. So this has been already extended to other institutions. So these are the regions of origin of the material. So not only Europe, but many other parts of the world. You get taxation detailed data. It's very important to have coordinates, at least for crop wild relatives and land races, to have a better idea of the environmental conditions. You can get also characterization data. This is an example. The characterization data are in non-standardized form. So this is an example of a Peronospora destructor tolerance in onion, and you can see the experiment description and the variability in this experiment of scores. Also, in situ data will be included in EURISCO. Starting this year, at the end of this year, we should have the first data. We are creating the same type of data flow for in situ population data. I'm moving now to crop wild relatives, rather briefly, but I would say that in Europe is very important, as a second only to the Fertile Crescent in terms of high concentration crop wild relatives, and many populations are under threat. So we have a working group dedicated to this that has developed a concept of what to do in Europe to create inventories and the genetic reserves with most appropriate wild populations. And we had a project, EU project, Farmers Pride, that enables a lot of progress in this area with some members of the working group and Nigel Marks as coordinator. And this has developed several tools and guidelines. So, for example, you can find a catalog of crop wild relatives in the protected areas of Europe. You can match the geography with genetics and many other tools. Also, the working groups have done activities on European crop wild relatives. So, for example, beetroot crop wild relatives, beetroot relatives, Vitis sylvestris, or studies on the climate change effect on leafy vegetables. So these are the type of activities of the working groups. Moving on to on-farm conservation, we also have a working group dedicated to this, and again, a concept was prepared with a number of activities that the network could do together, such as to create an inventory of genetic diversity, develop indicators, promoting good practices, and so on. And again, Farmers Pride was very instrumental to bring forward activities in this area. And again, we have a number of very useful tools and guidelines and information material that is available from ECPGR and Farmers Pride website. There is also this online database of best practice evidence based of in situ land races. Moving on to use of genetic resources. we will have a presentation tomorrow on this, but just to say that in 2018, ECPGR created the European Evaluation Network. So what it means that there was an agreement in the steering committee on the establishment of this network. So all the principles were agreed by the member countries, and the principles would mean that we try to create partnerships between public and private sector, and also with the contribution of the European Seed Association, so the industry was behind this initiative, and also thanks to a German funding, it was possible to start creating, implementing the idea of the network, that is to explore the diversity in European gene banks, bring it out of the gene banks, and plant it by the breeding companies across all of Europe, and evaluate it together and genotype it and include the data in eventually after an embargo into the public domain. So you will hear more detail about this from Sandra tomorrow. And then going towards the end, I would like to mention that we had a Horizon project called Generous Bridge, where the networks of animal, plant, and forest genetic resources came together to develop a strategy for Europe. This project was also useful to start to establish a journal, Genetic Resources Journal, and I'm doing some publicity here. This journal is now maintained by us in the ECPGR Secretariat. It is a journal where you can publish for free and you can read it for free and include information that is, let's say, not big science, but very important for the plant genetic resources community, and you can consider publishing here. In any case, the result of this project was the creation of strategies, one strategy for general for Europe and one for the various domains. So we have a plant genetic resources strategy for Europe developed. So this strategy has a number of targets to 2030 on the usual themes, crop wild relatives, on farm, with a number of objectives, yes, called target that we would like to reach in 2030, and also for ex situ. So all these targets are meant to improve the situation and ensure that plant genetic resources are permanently maintained and available and well rich of information, so with the risk of growing and improving, and with sustainable use guaranteed, with involvement also of farmers and civil society. So we have these targets, and there is a need expressed in this document to enable a transition which requires a coherent European policy framework. So nothing will happen if there is no clear mandate and commitment from the European countries to work in this area. And so we need an efficient long-term infrastructure. This is something that will resound in your ears, what we are trying to do. The idea is to have a European Coordination and Information Center on agricultural genetic resources that coordinates activities that can be carried out with a sustained financial basis for collaboration in Europe and in the national programs. So this is what is actually missing. So in conclusion, PGR are essential for our food security, and Europe requires a long-term investment to maintain these well conserved and actively used. We have a strategy now, and this has been developed with many stakeholders and experts. The implementation is possible only if there is a firm political will. So progress, the infrastructure that we are trying to create, could be a route to this implementation. Okay, thank you for your attention. I think we go on.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Good morning, all. Yeah, as Lorenzo explained, ABS appeared on the history of PGR conservation only. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. As Lorenzo explained, access and benefit sharing is something that appeared on the PGR, on the history of PGR conservation, as something that came somehow from outside. Yeah. Taking into account the long history that he has mentioned, yeah, 1992 seems not to be such a long time, just 3 decades. Yeah, but from the point of view of the agroscientists, this milestone, the implementation of ABS, has changed the panorama very severely. Yeah, and another thing to be stressed is that ABS did not appear as something that was needed for conservation goals. It's something that states negotiated within an international air summit, and is a kind of response to the historical inequalities among the countries on every resources, not only biological resources. So somehow the countries with this agreement are trying to solve, or at least make it smoother, some of the big inequalities that are in the world. Yeah. So seen from the point of view of agroscientists, that is very difficult to understand. Yeah, because there are many other inequalities in the world to be solved, and it doesn't exist for the moment such an instrument that makes the actors involved in any research or economic activity somehow try to balance the inequalities that already exist. However, that's the situation, and yeah, I'm going to share how the situation is being dealt with. Yeah. Oh, it doesn't move. I cannot change the slides. I don't know why. Don't work here. That's not here. Okay. Okay, that could be as well. Well, then we need to take into account, I'm not insisting on that, but one thing is the meaning of access and benefit sharing, and another thing it's significance. As you know, ABS was agreed in a World Summit where many aspects related to sustainable development, not only the environment, were enacted and were agreed, and somehow, yeah, ABS is a kind of compromise or commitment of the states. Yeah, the difficulties come from the point of view of implementing it, and I'm going to explain which are the current regimes, or the two main different systems for ABS. They are bilateral systems, and they are also multilateral systems. Yeah. Okay. Well, the key elements of any ABS system are those. Yeah. The Convention on Biological Diversity says that there has to be a prior consent of the country or appropriate representatives of the provider that give accession. A national competent authority is to be designed. In some cases, as you know, the provider and the national competent authority are not the same. It might not be public. Mutually agreed terms are to be signed or negotiated, and there is also the necessity of taking into account knowledge of indigenous peoples and local communities. In addition to that, by the mutually agreed terms, the two parts need to state which the beneficiary is going to be. They can freely choose it, and there is also a necessity of observing the compliance of obligations. If any regulation exists, and if we are only going to create a bilateral agreement on the basis of the Convention on Biological Diversity, anything could be agreed. I mean, there are two parties negotiating, and the negotiation could have anything inside. Since the Nagoya Protocol was approved, some of these elements were more specified. How the national competent authorities should be, how the prior consent is to be get, but there is still a lot of possibilities. Some countries are developing their own regulation to make to let and the potential user know how they could they need to or who they need to contact, which is the national competent authority in the country, and how the process of agreeing something goes. And there are even some national regulations that explain which an adequate beneficiary for them could be. But the main problem for researchers or even for conservators related to bilateral agreements is that they need to go to the country or contact the country and start a long process. And there is also that something that the Convention on Biological Diversity didn't take into account, and is that many countries divide the point of the national competent authority into separate institutions, and they oblige normally people to get two different permissions: permissions for the access and a second permission to have the possibility to bring the access resources to your country. So it may happen that you get the first permission, you go, you can make some activities of catalogation and so on. You're very happy with your resource, and that after you don't have the possibility to bring him back with you the resource that you have researched on. That happens because they are normally two separate authorities, and that's also a possibility. So in comparison to this situation, the possibilities offered by the special agreement, the one of the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture, are many. I know that there are also disadvantages, as Lorenzo has said. And there are only some crops included in the annex. The processes are not that simple. We still need to have better systems in order to know what could be accessed. The system is not automated. We still don't have a kind of one door, one key system, which could be very useful. But at least we have something that is functioning. Functioning thanks to the efforts of many institutions. I'm not going to mention all of them because he has already taken time explaining that very clearly with many graphs. So the experience of the treaty is quite interesting because some of the elements that are required by the Convention on Biological Diversity have been created, and in my opinion, have been created in a very creative way. We don't have a bilateral system, there is a multilateral system. If we read carefully the Convention on Biological Diversity, it is said that the benefits of the genetic resources should be equally shared. That doesn't necessarily mean that the agreement is to be between the user and provider. Yeah, this system permits or gives the opportunity of a wider benefit sharing and has a wider impact on the world. I think perhaps the single provider may think, yeah, oh wait, with a bilateral agreement, I could have or I could ask for more. Could be, yeah, but you have here some certainties. You have also the certainty that other people may know that you have that you are offering resources that could be accessed, and you are getting some value and also some services. Perhaps not the ones that you will give, or not all that you can ask for, but many. Yeah, and I think that with this system that has in the last account 150 countries, I think, are registered. Yeah, we have 195 countries all over the world, and 150 have joined this system. So it is not perfect, but gives some advantages. And I think that little by little, countries are getting consciousness of that fact. Yeah. Well, the system of benefit sharing has been organized centrally, and it goes very well because there are some priorities, and the benefit sharing, there is a benefit sharing fund that gives priorities to some things, and those are the ones that are focused. Yeah, so that the ones that the users provide some money or resources to the multilateral system, and this is shared through a more complex system that has many goals. Yeah, and I think that is a promising element. Another thing that from the legal point of view is very relevant is the standard material agreement. Yeah, there are two models of the standard material agreements. The countries, the country parties in this system have agreed an agreement, and a standard material agreement, which is a contract written, yeah, and the provider and user, when they wish to use the standard material transfer agreement, cannot change everything. They have some gaps where you can put your name and so on, and all the clauses of the all the wording of the agreement has already been written and cannot be changed. So you don't need to negotiate. And even if one of the parties want to negotiate, there is not this possibility. Yeah, this is very good because, well, the agreement itself, from the point of view of a lawyer, is a bit complex, too long, but at least it is certain for all the stakeholders involved, users, providers, and this is a very useful tool, because otherwise, yeah, any user that is asking for resources to the multilateral system could need, at least some assessment from a lawyer, yeah, and that is complicated and also could be costly, yeah. So it's a very good tool, yeah, even if the agreement is a bit, from my opinion, a bit long, but it's extremely clear. So the one that signs, no matter if provider or user, has knows very well which the conditions are and so on, and that has been something really valuable. As I said, the parties, the countries that took part in the conference agreed this standard material transfer agreement, so there is no necessity of signing anything else. Okay. And as I said, well, I'm not mentioning that there are only some crops. This is one of the limits of this treaty. But there is intention, at least in the next meeting of the governing body, they are going to discuss about the possibility of making the list a bit bigger. Well, the proposal from Switzerland is making the list very big. Yeah, the amendment means getting out the annex and saying all PGR for food and agriculture are part of the treaty and the multilateral system. Yeah, I'm a very positive person, but I don't think that's going to happen, at least this year. But yeah, at least they would start thinking about the possibility of implementing or amending the list. Yeah, so as I said, the system promotes equality. Equality is what the Convention on Biological Diversity promises, not equity. Yeah, equity and equality are not the same. Equity is treating all as equal. Equality means fairness and justice. And in this case, yeah, there is a system that has been agreed and has some elements so as to make it possible an equitable benefit sharing. Yeah, we don't have any other system, global system as such. As this one, so it's difficult to compare. Yeah, we may discuss of equality could be improved or not regarding the system, but at least this is something that is working currently. Moment. So advantages, disadvantages of the multilateral system, as I said, yeah, the broadest possible basis for access and ABS, including CBR, is nowadays in these systems. Avoids lengthy negotiation, which is yeah, very interesting, especially for the users. Potentially, the international treaty offers a space in which to negotiate the extension of the treaty. That could happen, and there is a lot of effort by FAO and other institutions in development. Yeah, disadvantages. Yeah, some countries would like to have more equality or would like to get more resources or more money, but yeah, the thing is that perhaps accessing to resources doesn't give immediately as much money as some people may think. Yeah. And the remaining challenges, well, the system goes at very slow pace. Yeah, uses like conservation or research are not always distinguished from applied research and development. That is something that is happening with the international treaty, and that is, but not with the bilateral agreements. Yeah. And regarding the treaty, the plant treaty, the system is not fully automated yet, nor it is centralized at the global level. Plant genetic resources that are in situ do need more specific efforts so that the accessions are available for the future. Yeah, as I said, Annex 1 does not include all PGR. Yeah, but at least if we compare with the situation or the shocking impact that has for the agro-scientific community, the Declaration of Rio and the CBD in 1992, I think the situation is a bit more promising now than a couple of decades ago. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leire, for this clarifications.
So I have a comment for Lorenzo. So regarding the future infrastructure, I mean, you have to show three things. You have to show political support. You have to show the need. First, let's put them in order of importance. You have to show the need for such an infrastructure. You have to show that good preliminary work has been done. And you have to show political support. Now, I think that what your lecture just showed is that there is an incredible amount of preliminary work already done. I mean, we are not, this distinguishes us from all the other infrastructures that started. I mean, there is ECPGR, there is AGES, there is AQUAS, there is a series of guidelines, there is a information system. So it is incredible work that has been done. I wasn't fully aware of all the facets of this. So What's your comment on that?
Yes, my comment is that you are right, and all this work that has been done should not be seen as a completion of the situation or a status quo that is ideal, because it's far from that. So we should be able to pinpoint what is the difference that an infrastructure can create from the current state, and this will be maybe the difficult thing to visualize, because for many of us it is clear what is weak, what is missing, and what is not working. But for a politician, it's not so evident. So to say, now we are in this graceful state, and will be and it will be everything fixed. This is easier to show in other situations, such as some of the research infrastructures that we have seen yesterday. So I think this is the key point, to be able to clarify what is the visible improvement that everyone can appreciate to make the situation really working, really fully operating and efficient, and not just verbally or partially functioning.
But the numbers you gave are very eloquent, in my opinion. I mean, of 2 million accessions, 70,000, if I understood well, are in the European Gene Bank, right?
No, they are all in the European Gene Banks, but only 70,000 have been labeled by the countries as committed to be well conserved and distributed. So it means that the countries don't have the courage or the means to maintain all the 2 million, or
95%
to declare that they will be available. So they are not available if they don't say that they are available.
In your map of the countries adhering to ages, I thought I saw that France and Spain are missing. Is this correct?
It is correct. France is struggling to do that, to join. They want to join, but they had administrative problems, and they have now developed a letter of intent, so they cannot sign the memorandum of understanding as it is, but in a flexible way we will accept a letter of intent and go around some legal issues. Spain is watching at France what they are doing, and then they will use the same system. So there is a good expectation, also very slow process, that also these two countries will get in. Another that is missing is Greece. Then I have a blank idea about how Greece will decide, because there is not much dialogue and mutual understanding with Greece, I'm afraid.
And one question for Leire. I was probably wrongly under the impression that crops that are not in the Annex 1 of the international treaty were easier to exchange, like tomato. But what you said, it's just the opposite, right? It's better to be in Annex 1 for exchange purposes.
Well, if it could be a crop which is in the scope of the Nagoya Protocol, you will need a bilateral agreement. Yeah, so crops that are not under the scope of the Nagoya Protocol nor in the annex of the treaty are in a, I don't know, in the limbo. So anything could happen. Yeah, it depends on which is the country you are getting the resources from. Yeah, so if this country considers that those crops are in the public domain, you may have the opportunity to get them. Yeah, but if the country considers another thing, yeah, And if they are in the public domain and there is no regulation on, related to Nagoya or the Convention of Biological Diversity or the treaty, it may happen that you shall find problems to know which the national competent authority is and which the permissions could we get, how we get. Yeah. So this is for the moment being in a limbo hasn't been a problem, but if we see the draft of the regulation of PRM, so plant reproductive material, the problem is that even if the main goal of this regulation are going to be the varieties that are registered, the regulation also takes into account pre-basic seeds and also biological materials in preparation. So if a system of traceability is going to be established so that something can get into the transfer, not only into the market, then a clarification process is going to be asked. I think that this regulation has many gaps. Ricardo said that he thinks that some of these inclusions are mistakes and maybe they are going to disappear before the approval. But I honestly don't know. In legislative processes, anything can pass. Because laws not always need to be reasonable. Laws are creations, and that could be a problem. So for the moment, the ones that are in limbo are the easiest potentially. But for the moment.
And finally, sorry for asking so many questions. I have a question for both of you. So Lorenzo showed that in '83, there was a treaty that said that plant genetic resources were sort of a ownership of humanity, and they advocated free exchange. And then in '93, the CBD came and established this provider-user and the bilateral concept and the bilateral system. So the question is bipartite. First of all, what happened between '83 and '93 that changed so much the approach? And second, I have an issue with the concept of provider. So provider means ownership. I provide something that I own, right? And I have an issue with the concept of ownership of a plant genetic resource. I think that's something that grows spontaneously in your backyard. You don't own. That's my view. I might be wrong. In order to own something, you have to invest effort into domesticating it or growing it or learning, accumulating information about it. So what exactly is the concept of provider? Does it involve ownership? And what are the legal consequences of that? Sorry for making this very convoluted question.
Explain what happened between 1998.
The political change. Well, since '83 to '93, it was a time when the biotechnology was growing, and the impression, well, it was a time where the confrontation between the north and the south of the world was growing, and there was the impression that not only the northern countries had exploited throughout the centuries the developing countries, but also now the industry was taking advantage of the resources that were mainly growing in the tropical and subtropical world, and they were used by the north. There were also a number of NGOs that were very vocal and raised the issues at political or ideological level. So the Convention of Rio became a place where there could be would be an occasion to remedy to some of the wrongs that the North had done to the South, and that was a good occasion to try to put to clarify the case, and that there could be some way to compensate the global South of what the North did. And so this concept of national sovereignty came in. So this partly responds to the other question. The national sovereignty is established on all the material that is growing within the borders of the country. This is not, well, later we'll explain if sovereignty and ownership is the same thing or different, but certainly it is, for genetic resources, it is difficult. I agree with you, Giovanni, to think of that, because the origin of a material is difficult to establish. It comes from many places. So what is a tomato growing in your garden? Is it coming from Peru originally, or from? So now it is sovereignty of the country of Italy in a sense, but I will let Lere to expand on this.
Yeah. Well, it's also to be stressed that the decision of 1983 was an undertaking, not an international agreement as such. And the Convention on Biodiversity is a convention, and it was signed by 195 countries. Yeah, this is not very common. Yeah, so the agreement on the convention was extremely high. The Earth Summit was one of the most relevant summits by the date in all the history. So it is also very significant in other senses, yeah, because as you may remember, I'm not going to revise all the history, but the United Nations were created in order to avoid a third global war. That was the idea, yeah. So promoting peace all over the world, recognizing some rights, avoiding wars, and yeah, that's what the idea of United Nations. And little by little, United Nations transformed into an international fora where many other things relevant to the world and the people were being taken. Yeah, so I don't know if the decision of taking environmental issues together with sustainable development was a good idea or not, but that happened in 1992. Since 1992, all the environmental things are related always with sustainable development, and in this case, the recognition of sovereignty was like a symbolic, something very symbolic, yeah, recognition that was very difficult to implement because the idea, as Giovanni pointed, is very, very intangible, but symbolically had a great value. Yeah, what's the problem we have? It's very easy to say, well, ownership or provider. This is the problem we also have in terms of, for example, with the human samples. Yeah, the subject that gives or permits from its body to be taken some human samples is a source. Yeah, not the owner. Legally, it's not owner of his or her body, and it's a source. Yeah, and in this case, what you have is that the resources are renewable resources, and if you buy some seeds, the sovereignty is not in the seeds themselves, but in something intangible that they have. Yeah, genetic information, information to something. So the idea of ownership or related to the resources that could be renewed is very complicated. Even more if they are biological resources, as you know, as soon as they reproduce, genetic information is exchanged, a new subject or object or plants are created with new genomes, or at least some mutations.
Hot food.
So it's not that easy to define. Yeah, this is one of the problems we have, and there are more many. Yeah, nowadays when they are discussing about the digital sequence information and about including it or not. About including it or not as a part of the resource, the problem is gaining even more abstraction. Yeah, because the terms of access of and benefit sharing are not clear at all. Yeah, the idea that there is a user and a provider and the user, and that's all. That's not that easy. Yeah, because in some cases we may try to use the same scheme in other resources, in other areas that are, of course, in engineering and so on. It is also traditional knowledge, and there are also national materials and so on, and it couldn't be applicable. Yeah, the idea. So here, what we are finding is that the states have created a sort of starting point, regulation. They needed 20 years to approve the Nagoya Protocol, and now they are still thinking on how they could apply it. Yeah, and at least the treaty, the plant treaty, has given an option. I think it's more promising because Nagoya Protocol for the moment is stopping even the conservation activities. Yeah, and that's not one of the goals. The Convention on Biological Diversity had for first objective conservation. Yeah, so this complementariness between conservation, sustainable use, and access and benefit sharing is not functioning well. But as I said, it's a legal decision, a political decision that was enacted in a law, and now they are looking for a way to fulfill it. Yeah. So, and if you see that is my last comment, but if you see the Convention on Biological Diversity approaches the resources and plant genetic resources as something quite new. I mean, all the history that Lorenzo has mentioned about the human efforts on plant conservation and so on have not been taken into account. It seems that the world started to think about conservation in 1992, or at least this is the narrative. Yeah, this is the narrative, and there are no links. Yeah, both the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Protocol of Nagoya avoided to mention the FAO, the FAO efforts, and even the Nagoya Protocol didn't mention the treaty. It says that special agreements could be made, or in fact they are, but didn't mention specifically the treaty, even if that existed and was functioning. So there are still some sensibilities there.
Thank you, Lere. And the treaty is in line with the Nagoya Protocol, by the way. So if you use the treaty, don't worry about Nagoya. You can use the treaty. No. So as they say, we have a question in in the chat. Let me see if I manage to open the chat. Can somebody help? Cannot find.
Maybe here? This is to write you.
Okay. Oh, yes. What? Okay, this question is: the Nagoya Protocol, in its effort to regulate access to genetic resources, may be overly restrictive, potentially limiting the free flow of plant genetic resources and associated scientific knowledge. How can we ensure benefit sharing in compliance with the Nagoya Protocol, while also incorporating principles that enhance the openness, accessibility, and reusability of scientific knowledge in alignment with fair principles? Maybe just use the international treaty. It's my answer.
Well, this is very easy to answer, because the question has little trick. How we can, or how can we ensure? We cannot. that's the fact. I mean, the Nagoya Protocol recognizes sovereignty to the states, and anything written in the Nagoya Protocol is to be implemented by each state. The states, each of the states have taken some obligations. There is no deadline for the complement of this obligation. This is a problem, but they have some obligations regarding the materials, and also the implementation of accessing processes, and getting permissions, and so on. So, are the countries the ones that have to give an answer? And what can we do? We could ask, or perhaps grouping agroscientists, or talking with politicians and so on. We may insist and make pressure so that each of the states of the party of the Nagoya Protocol fulfill their commitments. Nothing else.
Okay, Bela. The microphone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Lorenzo, I was not very happy about your narrative, about your answer you gave. It was not an ideologic only reaction by NGOs that caused afterwards what we have now with the treaty and with the Nagoya Protocol. I think it was a reaction on appropriation of genetic resources by private companies, and not having the reaction of the countries was that they closed their borders and didn't let anything get out. So, and this was the real the fact that we had to find a solution. And I was in many discussions within the NGO world, and we were absolutely not happy that we shifted this paradigm. We had this paradigm shift from that plant genetic resources in the world are not anymore in the hand of humankind, but in the countries. So that is something that was not the will of the NGOs at all. So we would very much like to turn back the wheel and come to this discussion again. But the big problem we have is the patenting of plant genetic resource, and it stays there.
Thank you, Bela. I appreciate your point.
As long as we have a clear system, now we should have a clear system for the ABS system to implement that, and that's not working at the moment. And for us, of course, the international treaty system is for us much more easier to go. So that is very clear. But we could get rid of all of that if we would stop patenting plant genetic resources.
Thank you, Bela. I'm also in favor of heritage of mankind. But there is a question from Theo.
I think with Bela's remark, and this is addressing both of you, and thank you for the very clear and nice presentations. It gives a beautiful picture and everything is arranged and everything is fine. It's not. I mean, if we look at Europe, we have that very well managed ECPGR, and I think much is credited to you, Lorenzo, for doing that. And people know each other, come together. Great. We made descriptor lists. Who is using the descriptor lists? We got data on 2 million accessions. Do they exist? Are they accessible? I don't think so. Do we want to know whether they're accessible, or we didn't do anything about that so far to analyze whether those accessions do exist and whether they can be obtained when necessary. In terms of access and benefit sharing, it seems as if we have arranged things, but all those countries who signed ask users, you can't get material, even if it is on the under the Annex 1, you can't get it under the SMTA. The politicians don't want to hear that, right? The compliance committee of the international treaty says everything is fine, but in the meanwhile, everybody knows it's not. If we look at the transactions under the SMTAs that are reported to the Secretariat, it's, well, largely, I hope you know the numbers better than I do, but possibly 95% CGIAR, who needs it as international institutions to exchange. So from that perspective, it's good that it exists. But for the rest, it's paper. It's people coming together and creating a huge carbon footprint and spending a lot of money. And in the end, things only get worse. With the CBD discussion, the threat of a further limiting of access to material is very real. So what is the reality check? Isn't it time for a reality check? Since I feel that what you're describing in all its beauty and all its power, right, is so far from reality. I'm sorry to give this negative impression so briefly before coffee, but or I hope that coffee will follow. But could you respond to that, please?
Fred, there is no coffee, so don't worry about that. But yes, in a sense you're right. Well, maybe you're too negative because it's not only paper or virtual things. So there is also some solid progress. But I agree with you that things are not as they should be, and that we should be able to show that. This goes back to the answer to Giovanni. So yes, we need the reality check. We need to be able to very clearly present the negative case, so not only the positive, and to show that we need a change. And so just saying that is probably not sufficient. Nobody realizes it. How to do it, I'm not sure, but your concern need to be concretized in something visible that we can bring to the face of the policymakers.
Yeah, and in the case of ECPGR, I think that in Europe we're now at the stage where we have all that infrastructure. We know who's working, who's involved. We know what we want to do. We described everything. We can make that step to bring it onto that level that it does work, right? And the ECPGR is also very supportive in that. The research infrastructure could also be an instrumental, could be an instrument to reach that level. So if I sound negative, I sound critical. And I do believe that we can raise it to the level where we should be. In the case of plant genetic resources in Europe, in the case of international legal instruments, I'm less optimistic, given the DSI discussion that has come up over the last few years.
Mm-hmm. Nigel has something to add. Oh.
Here comes the optimist.
I think I may be exactly the opposite, actually. So I agree with what Theo's just said and the gist of the conversation, but I think, well, you need to answer this question because I don't know the answer. One of the reasons I think that it came about, this change from common usage to national heritage, or whatever there was, the change was not because of agriculture, not because of plant breeding. We aren't the only users of genetic resources. And there are much clearer examples in medicine of exploitation of resources taken out of the Amazon. with a plant, a medical company going in, taking material from a certain tree, and then making billions of dollars out of that one tree. That's what I think triggered it. And we were the unfortunate people as if you change that rule, then obviously then it also has to apply to agriculture. So within this context, even if we were to do what Theo says and change the rules, would we be able to do that? Because what would be the implications then for medicine and other users where they have different kinds of exploitation? And that's presumably the Nagoya Protocol. Why the Nagoya Protocol is there? Because they're dealing with that medical case. And so I don't know if it's possible to disengage our community from the other communities that also use. So that for me is a problem. But maybe you can answer this.
Okay. One of the most surprising things that had the Convention on Biological Diversity is that regarding the use on access and beneficiary part, not the conservation, but all the other things, is that for the very first time in the history, states negotiate on an enormous scope. I mean, plants are, you said, 391 species, or so many, 400,000 species with many accessions in many countries, are used for many things. So it's not easy to understand how, because normally, in order to get to arrange some things, what the states do is compartmentalize. So they divide any problem in small pieces to take agreement. But this is huge. And I think that in the 1992, they were not very, they didn't know very well what they were signing. Yeah. And some countries said, well, okay, we have, in addition to that, we have the World Trade Organization and the IPS and that all stuff, which is not going to be affected for this convention, and we will see how it works. Yeah. So the situation seems negative because it is, but I think what I find promising is that at least we have found we found a way. Yeah, the International Treaty of Plants is a good effort and a good opportunity, and I think that the future, the success is going to be around the instruments that focus on certain things. Yeah, because in getting the pharmaceuticals out of the treaty has been one of the rules for exit, for success. So that's going to be. And in my opinion, if European countries could take take part more deeply in the treaty, as you said, Theo, high percent of the transfers are transfers whose provider are the SGR centers. So if the European infrastructure could be better and the offer could be better, then the other countries could see that the seriousness of Europe could be somehow seen as something that is promising as well. Yeah. So having a research infrastructure that got all the effort that the European institutions are doing in conservation and putting all those resources in a system which could be similar to the one that have SGR centers. I think that would improve drastically the situation of the treaty. Yeah, for the moment, European countries are being quite timid. Yeah, in offering. I don't know which the problem is. If it is problem of how it is organized, or I don't know. But it's true, as you said, that a high percent of the crops that are accesses through the multilateral system come from the international network. Yeah, so maybe.
Thank you for the answer, but it doesn't really answer the specific question I was asking. So the specific question is it possible to revert the situation for agriculture without implications for the larger reign of users, including pharmacology.
Yes.
It is.
Yes, it is. But therefore, we will need that the states accept agreeing something only for agriculture. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Well, in that case,
to be
no
honest,
excuse for not changing.
to be honest, you are only seeing from the point of view of the Convention on Biological Diversity. But on the World Trade Organization, since the Doha round, 2 decades, the states are waiting to agree something on the commercialization of agriculture, and they hadn't agreed anything. They are still discussing. Yeah. So I don't know if in the mind of a Minister of Agriculture of any country in the world, those could be seen as separate. Yeah. So if a reasonable effort in minds is done, that could happen. Yeah. But politically, I don't see it that easy. And the European countries, the United States are problematic in the World Trade Organizations. They are avoiding the fair agreements. So the interest Europe is pressing for at the World Trade Organization at the CDB are not the same. So, yeah.
So I'm sorry, we need to interrupt this conversation here, and we can continue. We will not resolve the problem here, I'm afraid. And so thank you very much for your attention, and your questions were very much appreciated. And we move now to the other session.